Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Francois, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Enzo Connect, a guest experience operating system for the short-term rental industry. And today we've got Wil Slickers, founder of hospitality.fm. Figured it'd be our time to kind of share more about Wil, since you've been blowing up in the short-term rental space, but not just the short-term rental space, the hospitality space, food and beverages, and everything hospitality focused. So Wil, you want to do a little introduction on
Yeah,
what hospitality.fm is all about?
for sure. It's a little weird being on the other side of the microphone and being interviewed. So forgive me if I get maybe a little rambly or lost throughout the conversation. But
This is
uh,
casual. You're good.
no, it's super casual. It's great to see you again, Francois. So yeah, I guess like Hospitality FM and who I am. I started off as a front desk agent in a Marriott hotel. Really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, let alone career, job. I was really just bouncing job to job. I just closed a business that I had as a chauffeur, an event company, where I failed miserably in a lot of ways, but learned a lot that I brought into kind of like this new journey. But um, from that hotel, I just kind of fell in love with people. Like I knew I had a passion for people, but I just never knew where that passion lied in the sense of making a living off of it. And so I love the hotel world, grew in that position. I was at a 716 unit hotel with 60,000 square foot of event space,
Oh
valet.
man.
Like it was a nice 4-star diamond resort. And
Yeah.
just yeah, it was such a big property that it's hard to get mentored in that position. And so I took the, long, hard time to think about what I wanted to do. And I moved to the Oregon coast to work for a boutique, independently owned property. And from there, I sought out mentorship hugely. I was like, I want to learn everything about revenue management, guest experience, technology. How does this all work behind the scenes that the guests don't see? How can we smooth it out in like the streamlined sense in order to make the guest experience that much better and to make our revenue that much better? So I got really into that, like nitty gritty
Yeah.
operations. I lived in that hotel basically. Um, and from there, I started the podcast out of boredom. So that's kind of like where my career, took off and went from one of the youngest hotel GMs on the Oregon coast to then founding, doing a podcast full time to a management company for the short term rental space. So
I love
yeah,
it. And we met on Clubhouse where you were already sharing a lot of knowledge through that platform. So tell me a bit more about how you're thinking of bringing all of these different podcasts and all into hospitality.fm, because I've seen throughout the pandemic kind of an increase of podcasts, right? Some that are focused on hotels, some that are focused on short-term rentals, guest experience, but there's a lot of synergies between all of these different podcasts. And what I'm seeing is you're essentially aggregating, if I'm explaining it correctly, all of this into one big resource for anyone hospitality enthusiast to have access to. Is that correct?
yeah, pretty much. Like you and I are both young founders in the space. And so like I look back at when I was 19 and I went on to Apple Podcasts on my phone, Googled hospitality podcasts, and I found two maybe that were good.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? There's nothing for us younger people. Like there's nothing that's going into the deep details of revenue
Yeah.
management or any of this stuff. Look now, fast forward like 6 or 7 years, there's an abundance of them now. And the whole point of Hospitality FM was more or less to kind of create what I needed at 19, but then also to see where like this shift is going. Like a lot of people don't know that 26% of the podcasts on Apple Podcasts alone don't make it past their first episode. So there's 26% of all the podcasts in that platform alone that are just wasted space. Like
True.
no growth, no second episode. Maybe if the other statistic I think is like something about 50% don't even make it past 10. So if you're not that
Mm.
26%, you're going to be in that 50% of not making past your first 10. And like you, I saw tons of people right in the beginning of the pandemic just get into podcasting. Like, well, we have
Yeah.
nothing else. Like webinars and podcasts that became
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
And I predicted it early on. I said I'll guarantee 80% of them won't be here when things open up. When things open up, revenue streams, they hire people again. That form of content it's so time consuming and you need to put a lot of thought into it to do it right. And it's always learning. It's an evolving piece of media. Yeah, 80% won't make it. And so I kind of, took pride in that. I was like, all right, we're going to be that 20% that continues to move forward and not stop. And so the ones that are on the network now are part of that 20% that never gave up
I was going to
throughout the
say.
pre-COVID and in the beginning of COVID. They never stopped. Things are open. People are making money. Short-term rentals are making money. Technology companies are receiving funding. Lots of funding is going into the hotel space now with, as you see, like Booking.com acquiring billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
So like they're still here. They're still rocking and rolling with the content, with the brand, and with the mission of that show. And so that is the purpose of Hospitality FM, is to bring them together, create new shows with new thought leaders in the space, whether it's you know, a tech podcast or if it's an educational podcast or whatever. We're going to find these people to create this, curated, like all in audio content.
And how are you thinking of categorizing? Because what I'm seeing, and obviously this is me taking a bit of a step back from the podcast, but I'm seeing a lot of convergence, right, between hotels and short-term rentals. And it's something I've talked about a few times, whether it be on Clubhouse, on your podcast, or on other places. You're going to categorize different types of podcasts so people can kind of figure out where their niche is or learn a specific thing that they're looking for: revenue management, hotels, the short-term rentals. How do you think all of this is going to play together as it kind of, essentially the main theme is hospitality, whether it's revenue management, whether it's hotels, short-term rentals, food and beverages, it all goes under the umbrella of hospitality. So how do you think you're going to dominate that podcast network? Are you thinking of bringing them all together? Are you thinking of kind of keeping everyone at their own categories until we see that full synergy? What are your thoughts?
It's a really good question. Right now we're keeping them all under one roof. Like Hospitality FM, you go to the website right now, you'll see the players designed to showcase right up front on the website the most recent episode. So whoever in that network has published an episode, I don't care if it's food and beverage, tech, short-term rental, hotel, their episode gets placed first, and it goes through a cycle, so it updates pretty instantly. And then underneath, you have all the shows individually, non-categorized. It could be, the Hospitality Mavericks podcast, which is a big focus on food and beverage, but a big chunk of their show is about thought leadership. It could be, the Proven Principles podcast, which is a hotel podcast, but he's had people like Jeremy Gall or, Andreas Giovannis King from Sextant Stays. Like these people, as you can see, that shift, that blend, that blur of hybrid, short-term rental hotel is happening. But in the long story short, where I see it, phase 2, phase 3, we're definitely going to have to subcategorize outside of just hospitality, right? Like, you have meta search, you have all these things happening inside the internet in itself. Internet 3.0 or something like that's coming out, and it's all designed about micro search, like that very key detailed, not just a Google where you can type in podcasts in software. Like you can literally food and beverage podcasts in the US, and it'll be very like what do you call it?
Yeah, it'll narrow down the search to the N+10 depth that you're looking for. Actually, it's funny because that is one of the struggles that I've found with different podcasts when just going on Spotify or things like that is my search criteria are very specific, but too specific. Yeah. And then I'll just find maybe one episode that I like, but then I listen to the rest of the podcast. It's not really what I was looking for because it's completely different subjects. Whereas this is going to be helpful to kind of hone down on what I want to focus my time listening to. So I'm really intrigued as to how you're going to bring all these things together. Now, you've been a one-man show for a bit, but now you have a team now. So how are you growing that side of the business? And I'm not talking about recreation rentals. That's a whole thing in of itself. But the podcast side of things seems to be obviously blowing up. And are you building your own team for that? Are you thinking of leveraging other podcasts' team to kind of bring them all under one umbrella? What's your thought on that as you scale?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was editing and producing the podcast by myself for the longest time. I think with Slick Talk, I was editing it and producing it, scheduling it, doing the social media stuff, all the copy notes, like everything. Yeah. For like 3 years. And I finally outsourced it. And then with the creation of Hospitality FM, I actually fired that agency and said, you know what, the attention to detail is not there. So I'm actually still running a lot of that basic stuff right now, but we're in the process of hiring a main network producer because most of the shows in the network have signed want to offload that piece of work. They want to just really get to set up the guests, create like have that conversation, and they just want to press record and stop recording, and that's it. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and when it comes to curating show notes, to scheduling and publishing, to aligning sponsorship ads, and to all this other stuff, social media on top of it. So
thank God this is informal, because I'm realizing that as we're doing this, how unstructured I am on just having this cool conversation with you. So I appreciate all the work you're doing on that side of the space. It is a lot of work.
Well, after a while, it kind of gets the second nature, but it's a lot of work. And for these people, like my goal is to let's get their thought leaders in what they do, whether it's guest experience, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's hotels, vacation rentals, you name it. They're a thought leader, and what we need to do is really offload that work, take on we get paid for it when we find them sponsorship agreements and we find a right partner. We're big believers in partnerships, not just advertisers. So finding that right partner for them, getting that offloaded, they're making majority of that advertising spend, but we're able to offload a lot of the work and help create that beautiful professional clean structure for a show. That way, when they're growing and their audience continues to grow, and when they go to conferences and speak, they have nothing to really worry about other than delivering on what they're best at. And that's great curated or unscripted conversations like this, or like many of the other episodes that they have on their show. So yeah, it's a lot of work for us to take on. I'm still growing the team, like I said, hiring a main producer for the network to really bring on the main shows that need it. And then, of course, learning how can we automate. So you and I are big fans of automation.
Yeah, 100%.
So, we're playing with new tools and figuring out what software, is Adobe right for us? Like, do we need to waste time editing in Adobe when we can get Descript and edit a video, copy and paste the transcript, and it copies that chunk of that audio and video clip to another mini clip to schedule out? Like, there's so many different new tools coming out into the space. And so our job is to utilize them to the best of the ability for it.
There's two things I really like about what you said. The first one being on the advertisement versus sponsor. And I think that's such a huge thing. Like, you can't have people just advertising their products on your podcast, because then it just becomes a marketing channel for software companies or other types of companies. The fact that you're being selective on who comes in, that they have to be thought leaders themselves. They have to probably join the podcast as well, or some of them under the hospitality.fm brand. That for me makes perfect sense, just because you're building an ecosystem of top people, and obviously you need that sponsorship to continue to grow. But the other part about using the right tools, like, I'm all about that. You already know that, Will. I'm already all about using the right tools for that. So I'm excited. And then, are you thinking of letting thought leaders themselves build their own little micro episodes under the hospitality.fm brand? Because I feel like, CEO of Breezeway, of Aperto, of Hostfully, like all these different tech companies, and I'm thinking of it from a technical perspective, just because, that's the space that I'm in, but also all the other brands. Are you thinking of allowing those different thought leaders to, maybe have a micro episode under the hospitality.fm brand to talk about a specific subject?
It's definitely come across our mind. We're trying to really focus on, I think, like, we've gotten with the launch, we've had a lot of inquiries for current existing shows, but I think I mentioned earlier in our conversation is that ideally 20%. It would be great. 20%. But granted, they're great shows, but sometimes, like, we do need to be picky on who we bring in that's already existing. Do they align not with us, but like, not that there's any competition. I actually don't think there's a competitive sense in the podcast space, at least in the hospitality industry. I know there are, outside, but for me, we all really benefit each other when we were producing great content, having great guests, and doing what we love. As long as the message is clear that it's not to sell people, like that's like why 80% of those podcasts that started in the beginning of the pandemic, they did it just to sell. They sponsored themselves. They put their product on the line. They didn't really talk to their guests about their product. They talked about their own stuff. That we found, like, I found, like, through my journey through Slick Talk, the more I promoted myself, the more my downloads went down. The more I promote others, the more my downloads increase. And so, not from like just an overall like company perspective and moral perspective, but like, as you and I are a big fan of like Gary Vee, like give, don't ask. Like, I don't need to ask you for anything. Like, naturally stuff like that happens. And sorry to derail. So to go back
No.
into, yeah, I was gonna say that the idea is that we're gonna create shows with these founders, with these thought leaders that we are gonna hone into their brand. We're not gonna create it to be hospitality.fm, but
Yeah.
obviously we want to be a part of it. Like we're gonna give them full ownership and full creative control. We're just gonna be the power behind them to bring that to light and to bring it to the airwaves, so to speak. So we're already in talks with a couple, like, I wish I could say it right now, but I can't. We're already in talks with a lot of founders that have received multiple rounds of either Series A or Series B funding from VCs, like big operators in the space that just like people I look up to and have had on the show, and they're already like, hey, we want to create a podcast and partner with you. So ideally that will go down within like phase 2, phase 3, but right now we're just trying to get as much of like the curated content already out there into one platform. So think of like hospitality.fm is not only a network to help these shows produce their content and to structure and streamline, but it's really it's a player. Like it's like Spotify. You can go on the website on your phone, you can find the most interesting episode on there. There's over 700 episodes on the site already, and you can lock your screen and put your headphones in and continue to listen no matter what, just like you would Spotify, Pandora, you name it. So
I love it.
Yeah. So right now we're trying to really focus on going all in on audio, which of course goes into voice and all this other stuff that I can't announce yet, but building it on the back end.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, to touch up on one of the things you mentioned, when you go on a podcast and it's more like resource focused and learning, I've seen that same trend with Clubhouse. When Clubhouse came out, we tried to use it a bit as a channel to, essentially learn about our customers. And we really focused on, like, we would bring in guests, kind of like you obviously do with the podcast side of things. But I don't know if you remember, like every Tuesdays, 6 p.m., we'd bring on a guest, and we would tell the guests beforehand, do not talk about Enzo Connect. We're not here to talk about Enzo Connect. It's run by Enzo, but we're not talking about it. Talk about you. And I feel like when you share that and you take on the approach of being more about a resource for people to learn from, people respect that so much more that then they're intrigued by why are you sharing that information? And then they learn more about Will or Francois or whoever is in that position. So I'm really excited about that. I think you've got all the right intentions, all the right ingredients, and all the right resources, because you're clearly connected to all these top thought leaders. I'm humbled to even have a chance to speak with you at this point, Will.
Dude, don't downplay yourself too much. Okay. Nah. You're making some waves, and your episode's coming out on the show too. So like, there's a reason, like I think we align very much the same. So
100%. And I guess one of the last questions, well, I have two questions. I have one more personal, and then I have one more about the short-term rental industry. But your thoughts about the focus for the short-term rental industry in 2022? What are you going to be talking about at HFM? Is it going to be also different subjects, or do you have kind of a direction that you want to take HFM towards? Potentially the professionalization of the industry, or combining different subjects together. What's that line, or we say in French, fil conducteur, meaning, I actually don't even know how to translate that. The line that conducts you. You get it. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'll try to repeat that phrase, but I would butcher it. So I'm not even going to attempt for anyone. But man, that's a hard question, because starting out, we have 7 shows on the network already, streaming over 700 episodes, plus more that are constantly being published. So with those, we have, I would say 2 to 3 that are mainly food and beverage focused.
Okay.
And then you have a couple of hotel ones, and then you have some short-term rental. We have one show on there that is a hybrid of short-term rental hotel. And for us, like, we're really wanting to bring in, like, I really am genuinely focusing on the pie of hospitality rather than just getting short-term rental or just this, because I think, the more the short-term rental industry keeps taking off, other industries really have no choice but to kind of follow. So when I say other industries, I'm saying like sub-industries like hotels or restaurants. Like, they're getting a ton of investment already from the tech side. Now, operators, how are they going to evolve and continue to move forward in this new space that we're in? Because everything's completely different from, pre-COVID to even pre-COVID. And I would like to say chapter 1 because it's been so many damn chapters in this book of COVID-19. But
Chapter Omicron currently.
yeah, really. So I'm definitely going into the let's go all hospitality right now. For short-term
Okay.
rentals in particular, I do see that, you know, operators are in the short-term rental space. They're going to start buying hotels, and then
Yeah.
hotels in the whether it's Marriott, whether it's Hilton, whether it's that, they're going to start
Yeah.
buying homes,
Short-term
and they're
rentals.
going to start
Yeah.
buying multi-family buildings and creating apart hotels, and it's happening. Guests, the
Yeah.
line is blur even more for guests on
Yeah.
what brand they're staying in, what type of property they're staying in, and I think it's just the beginning right now. It's going to be
Yeah.
pretty crazy
Well,
in a good
honestly,
way.
I think this is, for me, this whole thing is leading towards a stay is an experience. And whether
100%.
it's a hotel experience that you're looking for, a resort experience, a cruise ship, an apartment hotel, a bungalow, a glamping, I mean, the type of stay experience that you're looking for is your personal choice. But the
Mhm.
way it's being run is, I don't think, going to be the couch surfing versus hotel, Four Seasons model. It's like you can run a couch surfing business like a Four Seasons and delight your customers, just like you can have these really shitty hotels
Yep.
running essentially, it's so I
Yeah.
totally agree with the lines being blurred. I've been saying it for like 2, 3, maybe 4 years now. And I think one of my first experiences seeing that was staying in a short-term rental in south of France that was run like a hotel. And in Italy, same thing. They had these apartment hotels that had a concierge desk, but
Mhm.
it was a short-term rental. And I was
Yep.
so confused. And I just remember saying it. I'm like, is this a hotel or is this a short-term rental? I don't get it. They have a
100%.
concierge like a hotel. They have a logo like a hotel, but I booked it on Airbnb and thought it was just some random dude's place.
Yep.
So I couldn't agree more, and I'm excited for this future ahead with hospitality.fm. I want to say link below, but I'm not sure where you're going to put the link. So
There'll be
to the
there'll be
side,
a link,
up, below,
all of the above.
everywhere. And then I guess the last question, which is more of a personal question, is what is your New Year resolution?
I try to avoid New Year's resolutions like the plague,
Same.
or like COVID. But to be honest, like I think I don't know about you, but for me, like the tapping into, like I don't know how to describe it. December 27th, 2019 was the last day I was ever employed by anybody else but myself.
Mm,
So I'm finally gotten to that stage where I'm like, you know what, I'm confident in this. That I don't need to freak out. Like, all right, like rent is paid for the year. Bills are covered. Groceries in the fridge. I'm able to food prep. I'm able to do this stuff. I'm able to travel. And I think for me this year, this 2022 vision is really going to be about honing into that, into the sense of like, I don't need to be worried about a backup, in the sense of like,
yeah.
granted, there always could be a horrible, horrible incident that happens and I lose everything. But the more I think like that, the more likely I'm gonna limit myself and what I'm able to
Yeah.
produce. And so
Yeah.
I think I'm really just gonna hone into getting into a better daily schedule of taking care of my body, whether it's working out, reading a book, meditating, going on a walk, simple stuff, just kind of getting out of the computer screen in a lot of
No, I
ways.
feel you.
Yeah, and then being more intentional with my time, with meetings I take, with meetings I don't take. There's going to become that point where some people aren't going to be happy that they won't be able to schedule some time with me, because at the end of the day, there's going to be that growth, and I think just be more intentional with my balance. I think that's the best way
Yeah.
to put it. I just want to be more intentional with it,
100%.
and that way I can perform better. We have a better product for listeners, for consumers, for anybody, for partners that decide to join with us. Like, I just want to produce the top quality, and I don't want Hospitality FM to be something that was launched and everyone got big hyped on and then never followed through. So my goal is to really see the follow through with balance in life. So yeah,
I like
hopefully
it. I
answers your
think,
question.
yeah, it's better than I want to work out every Monday type of goal. I like this because it's more, yeah, it's encompassing different things in your life. And what I do really like about this is, and I've been saying this from the get go, if you're an entrepreneur and your plan A is entrepreneurship, but you have a plan B, you're not an entrepreneur. Your plan A to Z is what you are doing. And I love that you're shifting towards that. Now you have that stability to know, because it's obviously always a risk if you're late on rent payments and all of that. Those are stresses that can
Yeah.
grow. I totally get that. But no, I'm super excited for the future of hospitality.fm and everything that you've been doing since meeting you. You know what, man? It's almost been a year now.
I think it's been a year. Like I feel, I feel like it's actually been over. Yeah, it's crazy.
Been a year.
Yeah.
Wow, time flies. Well, to many more years, and for you to come to Toronto eventually, that'd be amazing. Yes. It is a bit cold right now, but over the summer it'll be better. And yeah, I'm super excited for the future. So thank you so much for, well, first organizing this little thing, and obviously for the podcast, and excited for the future of hospitality.fm. Thanks, Will.
Awesome. Thanks for doing the reverse interview. It's always nice to decide what I can, but with the conversation with a friend, it's pretty simple and great. So thank you again.
100%.